Good morning, rockers. This is John from Global Reverb. I'm just going to give you a basic rundown of how I put together a sequence and how I assemble the basics of a dub reggae tune. First of all, you need some kind of sequencer. You don't have to have an MPC sequencer. You could use any other kind of sequencer. You could even use a basic Dr. Rhythm drum machine. As long as it's got MIDI out, you've got a lot of opportunities to make some interesting music. Start with a blank channel with nothing on it. All of these pads are assignable, and if you're familiar with these types of drum machines, I really do recommend the MPC series. Although there's no one particular MPC that's the best, I do like the MPC 5000 because it allows me to record a lot, and it has a very big hard drive in here, so I can record whole songs, whole albums, all on this machine without having to use a computer until the final mastering process. So let's start anyway. The BPM should be something that would be a reggae BPM. Reggae, of course, has a varying time signature, but I personally do a lot of this stuff on 140 beats per minute, so that although it looks fast, the actual rhythm itself will be playing at about 70 beats per minute. 2 bars is too short unless you're making dance music. So what I do is I make it 8 bars long, so you can have a nice lead line that loops around after 8 bars. I always start with a drum track. You can see here are my channels that are not assigned. I have nothing on here. But I'll look at track 1. And track 1 at the moment has a grand piano. I changed track 1 to be a drum machine. Okay, drum 7. I have it on full volume because I want my drums to have a lot of impact, unless they're the hi-hats. But let's see. I'm going to hit the kick and the snare on the 3 drop. That's what this sounds like. If you want to make it sound more like a real drum line, take off the full volume and use that snare again, but with the arpeggiator going, not on full volume, so you can roll in. It'll sound more like a real drum kit. Let's try that. Alright, everything's dropping on the 3, that's pretty solid. Now I need a hi-hat. I don't need any sound effects. I'll take off all of the effects that are on these channels. I don't need to hear any effects at this point, that can happen later. Alright, I've got my drums going in my channel 1, 2, and my percussion going in on channel 3, 4. So I have some separation, I can add separate effects on the channels. But at this point, I'm only sequencing MIDI sequences. I can change the drum kit at any point. But first I want to drop a hi-hat. Okay, I'll work with these 2. On the offbeat, that adds a little bit of tension by having the hi-hat on the offbeat, even though the kick and the snare are happening on the 3 beat. I need a crash, of course. A crash with a delay is lovely. And that I like to drop on the 1. I want that first crash to be louder, so I'll add extra crashes to it. And one more crash. I'll put 3 crashes on top of each other. Take off the master level. That's an interesting rhythm. It has a marching kind of feel about it. I then mute my first rhythm so it doesn't interfere with how I make my second rhythm. As long as the impact of the rhythm is dropping on the 3 beat, everything will be in sync and there won't be any problems. At this point though, so the first one is simple, a kind of a very insistent hi-hat. Again, this is only with no effects at this point. I mute track 1, I want to do track 2 now. I want to use a different drum kit so there's no phasing if 2 kits are on top of each other that are the same kit. So I'll go back to, alright, track 2. I'm going to use drum 2. That sounds more real. I like my drums to sound real if possible. Actually, I'll start this with a hi-hat. Okay, I'll drop the crash. Yeah, that accents the 3 drop. So that's a pretty simple beat. It's only the hats and the crash at this point. All of that stuff's going to my percussion. On this side where the drums are, I need a kick and a snare. So I'll drop a kick on a 1 and a snare on the 3. Out of time. Try that again. If you don't like the drum kit you're using, you can just scroll through your MIDI channels for a different kit. No. That one's interesting. Sounds kind of like a hip-hop beat. Track 3, I like to maybe do percussion or something like that. I have some more percussion here. If you use the quantize possibilities on these types of drum machines, it helps you to make rhythms and things that you might not normally be able to do with your hands. So you can see here, it helps a lot when putting together a rhythm. It saves you a lot of time and energy too. So what's that beat sound like? Whoops. Okay, it's only a little percussion. So I'm going to make a kick and a snare for this rhythm. Now it's track 3. I take off the master level so it's not loud, and I can add some more snare parts. I'll add a little more percussion to it for fun. That's 3 rhythms. This is my first rhythm. Second rhythm. Third rhythm. And now, for a real power rhythm, the last one here, I usually like to make a kick on every beat to really push the rhythm forward, but the snare still needs to fall on the 3 beat, but the kick can be on every beat. So I can quantize it to 4, 1 beat in 4, and this is what the kick sounds like. I have to find a nice kick first. That one's quite nice because it's not too in your face. Listen to this. The last channel I reserve for my power beat, the one that pumps on every beat, and that is the one you can really throw in there at the chorus or at the end of the tune to really push home the rhythm of all of these others. So for the 4th one, I put a repetitive beat such as sure, on every beat. It sounds like techno to begin with, but it isn't, believe me. After you put some reverb on there and a snare drum, this will be a reggae rhythm, believe it or not. Sounds a little harsh, but believe me, let's see what that sounds like. Excellent. That hi-hat's a bit hard for me. A little distorted. Prefer a real one. Okay, like I said, this is a pretty hard beat which should only be thrown in during the chorus or the end of the tune to push the tune home. You can't have that beat through the whole song. Of course you can, but I prefer to break things down a little bit. First rhythm. Second rhythm. Third rhythm. Fourth rhythm. Alright, there's something on the fourth track I don't really like. I don't mind. It's digital, but it'll blend in with the rest of the tune, especially when I put reverb on it. That's going to blend right in. Now I need to do something about a bass line. My track 5 I usually reserve as a bass line. I have two kinds of bass. I use this bass here, that's the hollow bass. That particular bass goes through a deluxe bass Big Muff pedal from Electro Harmonics, so it's distorted. You can hear the rumble. And I love using the distortion on this bass because it's really audible and it sort of rattles your teeth when it's nice and loud. Of course, it's imperative that you also keep another track for a sub bass, which could just be a tone, or it could follow this bass line only as a subtone. Alright, so here I've got nothing at the moment. You can play a bass line on your keypads, but I don't like it because I don't know what notes I'm hitting on here. Because basically pad 5 is usually middle C, but that doesn't really help if your sample is at a different pitch. If your sample is at a different pitch, using these pads won't really be C, D, E, F. It won't be like that. It'll just be different sounds of that particular sample. It's a killer. So I play the keyboard down here, and then down here I know because I can see what keys I'm hitting. And that way I can even write down the notes, or at least, because it's going through my MIDI channel, it'll play back faithfully what I'm playing on the keyboard, rather than just using samples and using these pads all the time. There are a bunch of basic MIDI instruments inside the MPC 5000. You can always download more, but I find if you get the basics and then modify them through this synth function, you'll be able to do a lot of things with it. For example, you can manipulate the sound however you like. And that's the best thing about using MIDI. Alright, I'm going to put a bass line down, but before I put a bass line down, I find that it grounds me quite well if I put a keyboard line down first. And when I say keyboard, I mean the most basic kind of reggae keyboard, such as that's really ska music because the rhythm is falling on the offbeat. That's the backbone of reggae. And I'm going to record listening to some drums because it helps me to get my rhythm right. And I'm just going to record maybe 4 keys, 4 chords, and I hope that's enough for me to start making a reggae tune. I have all my rhythms. Now I'm going to put in a keyboard on track 7. Something like this. It's out of time. It is quantizing to 1/16th, but clearly that wasn't right because I didn't know what notes I was going to be hitting before I started playing. I just know it's A, C, G, possibly D. Who knows? But I'll start with A, C, E. That's always kind of a, you know, if you've got 3 chords to play with, you can really make a song quite effectively in no time. 2 chords, you need to be a bit more creative. 1 chord and maybe you're not working hard enough. That's better. So now I know that I'm definitely playing A, C, and G. A, C, and G. So I go down on my bass. I need to bring it down a couple of octaves. And I'll come up with a bass line now. This is now on track 5, the distorted bass. I like that bass line because it's a really non-committal bass line. It's on its way somewhere else. And then the somewhere else will be a different bass line up here. But to support this first bass phrase, I copy it onto a different track. I copy it on a track 6. I change the instrument because I don't want it to phase like what it's doing now. I changed the second bass phrase to actually be a sub bass. It's harder to hear, especially on a mobile phone. You won't normally hear the sub bass, but it's absolutely essential to give it some body. Okay, that's pretty basic. I've got my 4 rhythm tracks. I think that's all I need for this tune. I have the first bass phrase, sub phrase, and keyboard. But what I need to do is come up with a chorus. And the chorus I'm going to put on these 4 tracks here. This will end up being a lead, this will be a lead, this will be another keyboard, this will be another bass, this will be another sub. So I'm basically echoing the channels one above the other, but the actual phrases will be different because one row will be the verse and the other row will be the chorus. So I can cut them out physically, in and out, whenever I feel like it, to make the chorus longer or shorter, or the verse longer or shorter. At this point I need to come up with a new bass line with either A, C, D, or G. And I'm not really a musician, so I just sort of play around and hope that the 2 phrases play into each other. And I hope by using the same keys that the phrases shouldn't go against each other or clash in any way. So I need to hear a new keyboard line. I'll use the same keyboard, but I'm going to double time the keys so it sounds different from the chorus to the verse. Ah, it's too low. That's better. Now I have to put a new bass line on here, which will be the chorus. Right, I have nothing planned. All I know is I'm going to start with the A. Let's see where that takes us. Rhythm always helps. No, that's too drony. I don't want the bass line to drone and go bam, bam. I want the bass line to sort of bubble or bounce a little. And I might have to play around for a little while before I get a bass line that actually sounds like something I would want to dance to. The key really is to keep it simple and not to put too many notes in, but from time to time you need a little run up and down the keyboard to make it sound like real music. So I might do this for a little while. That's not bad. It sounds like a good chorus. Now I just copy my bass line again. Like I said, I always have a distorted bass line first, or a muffled bass line, and then a sub bass line next to it. So I'm going to copy this bass, copy it to the next track. Done. Change the instrument, because if you don't change the instrument, the thing is going to phase or make some sort of sound effect and leave artifacts in your track that you don't want to hear. So try this instead. Normal bass followed by sub bass. This is the normal bass. Sub. It rattles the rafters. That's what it's for. And of course, whoops. Okay, there's something wrong with that bass line. Instead of deleting it, I'm going to try something else. Alright, track 9, the hollow bass, I'm going to quantize it to eighths. So it's going to play half as much. And also on the sub channel, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to quantize the sub channel to be eighths, so it's more rigid. But then that should fix my problem. If it doesn't fix my problem, I guess we'll find out. Fix it, do it. Alright. Let's see what it sounds like now. It's been over quantized. That sounds okay. Alright, so what we have a verse, bass line, sub, and keys. We just need to find ourselves a lead. We also have the chorus, bass line, sub, and keys. We have to find another lead for that too, because the leads are the voice or the vocal or the melody part of the song. Because otherwise it's all strictly rhythm. Everything's rhythm. And we're going to need a little bit of melody on the end of each of these. First of all, I'm going to look at track 8 and come up with a melody line for this bass line and keys. I like my lead lines to sometimes be a bit synthy or a bit distorted, something that makes it stand out from the rest of the music without having to raise the volume a lot. So here I'm going to use a synthesizer, and I'm not sure what it sounds like exactly. Yeah, that's not bad. Let's see what happens. I have to come up with some kind of lead line to go with the verse.